Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here as always with my good friend, colleague, and co-host Jim Gurley. And again, Jim, I know it's like beating a dead horse, but we have these pregame discussions, and we always click on these discussions like we're thinking, some sort of Star Trek fucking mind meld or something. And when what we came to today was this framework that Jim bumped into or created. You can clarify that when I pass the baton to you, Jim, but it's this 5M framework. But even more than the framework of 5Ms, which is manifesto, methodology, mentality, machine, and mindset, is the notion of frameworks and how, because of Jim's dyslexia and dysgraphia and how his mind works, how important it is for him to put stuff in a box, in a framework, in a structure that's defined. And he likes this tendency to create the words that have the same first letter. So as I'm describing this, I'm just kind of thinking about how your mind works and the structure that you need, because mine is more stream of consciousness than it is structure. But I also have been benefiting from the notion of frameworks because it's easier to explain things to people in a framework. It's easier to teach people in a framework. And so I think what we want to do is go through this particular framework, but also bring it and connect it back to our own framework, which is the 5 key areas of life on our flywheel. And this all came as a result of Jim coming upon a manifesto that we created. I guess I wrote it a couple of years ago in November 23, and we're circling back to it now. But yeah, it's a very interesting topic, and we'll try and stay contained inside the framework, but we'll reserve the right to wander a little bit as well. Jim, what are your thoughts? And by the way, I wanted to mention as well, we're going to make a habit of asking you, if you're listening and you haven't done it already, to go to the iTunes platform or Spotify or our website. But the iTunes platform has the most juice for us, and give us a review, give us some stars, subscribe, whatever the connection words are, because we really, more and more, we find this stuff to be pretty valuable. We're getting a lot of good feedback on some of this content. And I think if it's valuable for some, then it might be valuable for many. And so help us spread the word.
Hey, Mark, how's it going today?
It's good, man. It's good. I told you yesterday I was a little anxious. Today it feels a little bit better. So the frameworks
Yeah,
help with that.
yeah, yeah. But as you said, we always seemed on our pregame, we always seem to get on the same page pretty quick. But what led to this particular topic was the fact that you were 1 minute late, and
Yeah.
and for you, that's like an hour late. So it definitely fits into what we're going to talk about today. But yeah, if you were to put this in, our framework for the podcast, every episode we do is these 5 areas of our life. The center being ourself, and self awareness is number one. And then the others, I'll just go through them quickly. But of course, no particular order is worldview. That has a lot to do with how our relationship with the world, our childhood, our politics. That's just part of who we are. These are all going on, and just whether it being self-aware, our relationships, our relationship with others, very different relationship we have with women versus men, our fathers, our girlfriends, wives, daughters. That's always something going on. Our relationship with finances, money, it's personal, abundance, scarcity, it's a thing. And our relationship with our profession and our self-value. And then, of course, our health, our relationship with mental health and physical health, always stuff going on. But yeah, back to health. A few years ago, I when we met, I was struggling. I had some cognitive things that I was going through. I was right. What was that, COVID, or right after COVID, right around that time?
Hmm.
And so for the first time, I started to experience some depression, and I just, something was wrong. So I did started doing some testing. Fast forward, and a lot of these were just something I've had always had to deal with, and that's this. I call it it's neurodiversity, and the specific uh, uh, the testing they did validated what I already knew pretty much all my life, but never had to deal with it, and that's dysgraphia and dyslexia. Dyslexia is it's a cognitive thing. They call it a um, learning disability. I don't. I prefer not to use that term. I call it an ability to learn different. But
Hmm.
in simple terms, that mind, that neurodiverse mind, is processing information very fast. So average person thinks right around 300 to 400 words per second, or images, I should say, per second. My brain processes about 1,200 images per second. So that sounds good, but when you're writing, it's very difficult because the words are jumping around on the page. It's very difficult, particularly with writing. It's the same thing. Just writing things down or typing things is very difficult because they're just is moving too fast. The brain is processing information. But it turns out for innovative and even sports, I could predict things. I see things in 3 dimensions, so I could predict things that were going to happen just because my mind was jumping ahead so fast. Um, and also, it turns out I think more in concepts so I see big pictures right away. I'm looking at the big picture. Again, hard to concentrate on maybe a task, but I'm seeing how things align, the connectivity of each things. So what I've learned in business, and I think we all develop frameworks. But as an inventor, I make tools. Like my first patent was to align and connect cabinets. Well, instead of just installing the cabinet, I started to create a tool that did this faster. And of course, now it's installs millions of cabinets every single day, and it's, for the last over 2 decades, you know, changed the way people install cabinets. But that is an example of creating a tool to fix my own problem, and that
Hmm.
is uh,
Hmm.
alignment and connectivity. So it's a superpower if you can apply it. And without the frameworks, it's just very difficult sometimes to convey an idea or a concept to others because I'm jumping around. I'm seeing the big picture. So yeah, in fact when you and I decided to do this podcast, well, close to what, almost 5 years ago now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting close to that. Um, we I remember flying out to Orlando. We sat on a board and we said, let's create these areas, and we came up with these 5 areas. So this is a framework. But uh, but I'm doing some projects right now, and also I was interviewed recently, and it keeps coming back to okay, what was the successes I've had in life, and that starts with a mentality, a mindset. And the question is, and again, there's no this is I'm interested in your life experiences, how this works, but we develop these behaviors based on experiences or environment. And I find that whether I was, just say, the captain of my high school football team or the national championship teams that I was captain of, it was I had this vision, which now we refer to as a manifesto.
Hmm.
This vision, this big picture of what uh, I want to accomplish, and then the second one is now to get buy-in, and then create a methodology or a way to us to how we're going to win or how we're going to achieve that. And then again, it's the right people at the right time, right? That's what all we need in order to have success. It's as much about timing, but it's the right people aligned in the right place at the right time, and that takes a certain mentality. And
Yeah.
then the
It's
machine
it's
is the part where it has to be consistently. Like our podcast, we do it once a week. We don't miss. We have a machine that I give it to you. I record it, give it to you, you post it. That's the machine.
Mhm.
It's the ability, the disciplines to continue to repeat the same thing to get a result. But at the end of the day, it's about a mindset. It really is, and that's how you achieve anything in life. And I'm interested in hear your stories and the and how this applies to your life. But I think it applies to everybody's life.
It,
Frameworks just allow us to become very self aware
yeah,
of
it
how this
does.
plays out over time. Yeah.
I don't know that I was resistant to frameworks. I guess I'm generally speaking resistant to structure and rules. I'm not a rule follower.
Mhm.
I'm not a lawbreaker, but I'm not a rule follower. And
Mhm.
so, but I've been kind of sucked into this idea of frameworks because I find myself in a position where I'm trying to take all of my knowledge, experience, and wisdom and distill it out to people online. And that job is made easier if I can structure what my message is inside of a framework. It makes it easier to explain it to people. I've also been fascinated by learning how you think and how you
Mhm.
communicate. And at the beginning, I was baffled by it. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like he can't even say that word. Like what's like and then you're spouting all of this stuff that makes me believe clearly this guy is very intelligent, but he can't say that simple word. I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
I'm reflecting back on it, dude. I hope I was kind the whole time. I think I was.
Yeah.
And you've
Yeah.
been very open to my suggestions. I think we've discovered that if something needs to be read on the podcast, it's going to be me who reads it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I have been really enamored with frameworks, and I think this one is just as good, if not better, than some of the other ones that you've
Yeah.
shared with me. And I'm using them more
Yeah, no,
myself.
but I'm glad you mentioned it because, like I said, I'm at the point now in life where I can laugh at myself, which is not always easy to do. I'm very self-conscious, very embarrassed, right, to have this. And I spent most of my life, really, quite honestly, right up until probably 5 years ago, where I really did everything I could to try to disguise it because it was so embarrassing. And then I realized, yeah, I never learned really how to I would listen. I would learn by listening or watching things. So because reading was so difficult and so was writing,
Mm-hmm.
it was more memory of how something sound. And think about how different that is for you, right?
Yeah,
Or the
it's
normal
difficult.
person.
It's difficult to fathom. You know, what it made me think of is I heard somebody talking about speaking in public one time.
Mhm.
He talked about embarrassment, and he said something to the effect, and he was a very good public speaker. What you'll recognize when you get up on stage and you're flop sweating and you're shaking
Mhm.
and you mess up the words is that's going to enamor the people in the audience. They're not going to make fun of you because they're going to admire the fact that in spite of your weakness, you were brave enough to get up on stage in front of 200 fucking
Yeah,
people. And
that's
that's the
funny. Yeah,
way
that's interesting.
when people understand you, if they get to know you, your quote unquote weakness, they're going to look at that as a medal of honor. They're going to this guy overcame some shit, you know?
Mark, I'm no, I really appreciate you bringing that up. That's today, but that wasn't this way 10 or
I know.
15, 20
I
years ago.
you weren't
Yeah.
this guy 5 years ago.
But
I
I was
was
going to
with
say,
you.
even the corporate world and business in general, you have to admit it's really changed. It's become much more casual and people are much more accepting. But
Yeah.
let's just go back, 30 years ago. It really was a certain type of person that had to be a certain way. So it was difficult to become part of that, but also those disciplines and that structure was also very good for me, whether it was.
Yeah.
But
No,
anyway,
I think you
let's get into these individual ones because what I like to do also, whether I created this framework, I think a year or two ago, and then a lot of times I'll do this, and there's just iterations like anything, like even a patent, right? It's a prototype, it's a concept, it's an idea, and then over time I'll add to it.
Mhm.
So what I did in preparation for this episode was I like to do what I call a fresh search, whether it's a Google search or just an AI search, to get a high level um,
Current.
meaning of the word and then break it down and then reassemble it together. So that's what I put out there. So let's start off with the first one. And again, I'm interested in your opinion of these. And then when you put them all together, you have the framework, which I refer to as M5. And I have a number of these different frameworks. So I just decided to name them based on the letter, and then of course fives. Most of them are five, but sometimes I have an A3. So there's different ones. But yes, I like to use the same first letter because it forces me to flush out the meaning of those and then a relationship to those
Yeah. I
words.
think I think what we talked about, since there's a lot of language here, that I'll abbreviate it a little bit, but I think that just to clarify, the M5 framework is made up of 5 words that begin with the letter M, and they're in no particular order, as we
Mhm.
kind of were talking about:
Yep.
manifesto, methodology, mentality, machine, and mindset. And it was interesting as we were talking about, what order would you put them in? I think we both kind of concluded that the order doesn't really matter. It's kind
Mhm.
of an
Mhm.
ideation process, and you could begin with any of the M's, and it would lead to the other
Yeah.
4 by default almost. So,
Mhm.
and somebody might disagree with that. It's not a right or wrong thing. It's just kind of our
No,
collective
it's not.
opinion.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I'm glad you
I think,
mentioned that, Mark. It's not a right or wrong thing. This is just it's a tool. It's a framework to to be to help you flush something out or to bring something to the world that has some structure to it.
Yeah, I think what I was thinking about was the framework that I spent my life in, which is the recruiting, the lens of a recruiter
Hmm. Hmm.
and a salesperson. And there's a very, very specific process that I was taught at a very early stage in my
Hmm.
career, like year one. And both of my mentors in that space adopted the same. It was a very high touch, high value, high priced,
Hmm.
niched approach that was
Hmm.
relationship driven.
Yeah, Mark,
And
this is what I would consider a methodology. Yeah, we'll have
yes,
fun in this, but go for the start. What? No, yeah, go ahead and start off with the first one. But I would, this is ideal example of what I would consider. That's the methodology that you've
yes,
used to run your successful business, and somehow you adopted that. Well, in this case, you just said where you adopted that, or you learned this. Now it's your version of it, but that could have go back to a mentality or a mindset, early on in your life, whether it was a mentor or your father or somebody else. But anyway, let's get started with the first one of
yeah.
manifesto. What's the meaning?
Manifesto. I'm going to read the definition of manifesto. I'm not going to read the definition of the other four. I don't think, but
Hmm.
I'll leave that open for now. A manifesto is a public declaration of intentions, motives, or views of an individual, group, or political party. It's typically a bold and direct statement that outlines a set of beliefs, principles, and a plan of action. Manifestos are often issued to challenge the status quo, announce a new vision, or rally support for a specific cause. They're meant to be clear and powerful statements that define a movement and inspires others to join. So yeah, I mean, you could literally cobble together your manifesto after you made the decision about what your methodology and machine look like, and you contribute to that process by bringing your mindset to that discussion. So that's where I don't think the order is necessarily relevant.
Hmm.
So I could see where some people might say, let's define what our manifesto is, and then we'll build everything else around that. That would make sense, I
Hmm.
suppose, but I don't know that that's necessary. You know?
Yeah, I agree. But that's the order that I use it in. Doesn't mean it applies to everybody, but I do. I think as a leader, you have to have a vision that people buy into, that's believable, that you're going to take to the world. It's interesting they mentioned politics, right? This is very relevant to, let's just take this, the last, well, all presidential elections. Uh, the winner in this case was the red team because people believed in the manifesto. They bought into that. That's better for our country in the long run. And the losing team, the blue team, their message didn't resonate. Their message was off, and the result is a very different country.
Yeah, I
So,
think the people that voted for the guy who's in office now bought into the manifesto and
hmm.
didn't get caught up in his personality. And I think the
Hmm.
people that were against him got lost in his personality and didn't pay any attention to his manifesto
Yeah,
and gave it no credibility because of his personality.
yeah.
So but I think about my structure of my recruiting life, and it's like, well, I was told this is the way to do this, and then I kind of poked around and said, well, why is this the way to do it? And did what I always
Mark, do me a
do.
favor. Just go ahead and read methodology next,
Okay.
and then we'll break that down because I do want to go all through all five of them, and I think I can maybe use your business and even maybe your life as an example of how
Okay.
the difference between the manifesto and okay, yeah, go ahead
Yeah,
with methodology.
methodology refers to the overarching strategy and rationale that guides a process or a project. It's not the specific steps you take, those are the methods, but the entire framework of principles, theories, and procedures that informs you why you choose certain methods and how you apply them. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
So whether we use that again, this is fun. We can do this in a business application or a sports analogy application, right?
Yep.
If let's just talk about, I'll just use my high school. Yeah, you'll love this. Is funny. It's kind of funny because remember I was only 15 years old when I was playing varsity, and I remember it like it was yesterday. This talk about a mindset or mentality, right? Jack walks in the locker room. We're losing at halftime in a preseason game, and he yells, "Remember he's 6'4", 230 pounds, 18-year-old high school senior, right?" I'm a 15-year-old, you know, barely a buck 50 probably at that time, a kid. And I started off as like fourth string or third string. I ended up starting at the end of the year, but but I remember him saying, nobody runs on Hayward. And it was just like, nobody runs on Hayward. We ended up going on and having 99 total yards rushing for the entire season of a 7-game league season. We lost by the pass in the playoffs, no surprise. But that's to me was a mindset, a mentality that nobody runs. And so we
Yeah.
shut down all the runs, but it starts with a vision. That was actually could say, yeah, that is the next step is the methodology. We were going to have the best defense. We had a shitty offense, obviously. We couldn't score enough points to win the championship. But I think that's a good example of a sports analogy that early on in my life that I used later on in my life and everything I did, whether it was business or, obviously rugby and other things, and even raising a family. So
Well, it's what's
it's
interesting about that. It makes me think of if we walk over into the business world now and say I've been inside of definitely hundreds, maybe thousands of companies, and I was looking at what they were doing based on how they hired people, who
yeah,
they hired, which I think in terms of if you want to find out what a company is like, find out how they hire people and who they hire because everything
oh
else
yeah,
is from there. And it's
yeah,
like, and I'm astonished to this day how little of what we're talking about goes on inside companies that already have momentum. And
hmm,
whether it's a vision statement or a mission statement or culture or an environment, whatever the
hmm,
framework is inside an organization, they're really loosely defined. And I think the guy
hmm,
that you referred to, Jack, on that team, because of his leadership, that wasn't just a statement. That became the
yeah,
culture. That became the environment.
oh
That
yeah,
became the methodology, you know? And
yeah.
so,
It was 3 years later, and he became I think he was the MVP at the in the Rose Bowl,
yeah,
for the number one team in the nation. So yeah, again, it carries on into life, but it
yes,
starts early on. So yeah,
yes.
let's move on to the next one, and that's mentality.
Yeah, mentality refers to a person's characteristic way of thinking, feeling, and responding. Encompasses their mindset, attitudes, beliefs, and emotional state. Essentially, it's the mental and emotional framework through which an individual views the world and approaches challenges. Yeah, that almost sounds like a worldview, your mentality.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's
one
interesting because that same, I'm just going back to reminiscing about high school days, but I remember because my locker was next to, um, which is a very good friend, and he went on, I think, as you know, to become a professional baseball manager. Also, was the College World Series MVP, and they were very different. Obviously, a world class athlete. He was 18 years old, um, excellent enough, but he trained his technique, the way he lifted. He wasn't scrappy at all. He was just everything was like a precision. So I
Mhm.
learned a lot from him too, especially later on in life. So there's this is where it shapes you, right? You're exposed to these people, how
Mhm.
they do things, and then you
Mhm.
develop these different methodologies, but um, very different in their own ways of how they had the same mentality of being a competitor, but their method to do that. And by the way, they
Yeah.
were both 3-star athletes, so they played basketball, baseball, and football. So at that time, that was an uncommon. And that group, that class, had won many championships in all three sports.
Mm.
Uh, in junior
Yeah,
high
it's
school, high school, and then
contagious.
on. Yeah.
It's
No, it is.
contagious.
That's what this is why this again is why I created the framework because I realize how important a mentality is, and I think that you adopt that early on in life. This goes
Yeah.
to about you being on time. Is that what does that come from? Is that the fact
No,
that
I
your
think
your
you hit the
father
nail
was
on
a
the head when you mentioned my dad. I mean, he was a fighter pilot and he was an airline pilot, and time and things like punctuality and direction and weather,
absolutely?
and these are life-threatening or life-saving pieces of knowledge. I mean, if you're not on time, you're fucked.
Yeah.
and there was a period of time from 16, I guess 16 and 17 before I went to college, where I was driving and he would leave his car with me when he took on it. I would drive him to the airport, drop him off. Then I was also responsible for picking him up. And if I was late,
Interesting.
oh man, I did
Yeah.
everything in my power not to be a second late for him because he was gifting me this car and I was to be responsible for filling it up with gas and picking
I was
him up
just
on
going to
time.
ask you. I'm sure it was clean with gas as well, right?
I was a 16-year-old kid, so there was no perfection going on there, but I was
But he
very
had a high standard and an
high
expectation
standard,
when,
very high
yeah,
standard. Yeah. And
yeah,
then
that is,
I think it was reinforced. My mother reinforced it.
yeah,
We were taught from day one, this is
yeah,
part of being respectful, is being on time,
hmm,
respecting other
yeah,
people's time. And
yeah,
I told you, particularly my middle child, Hannah, when she was 10 or 11 years old, if I was a minute
yeah,
late for her, she would lose her shit. She thought I was dead, you know, because
yeah, yeah,
we set expectations with people based on our behavior or whatever
yeah,
methodology we might adhere to or whatever framework we might be operating within. And I think if you took a specific lens out and said, let's look at Mark's framework for how he lives, there would be one. It would be there, you
yeah.
know?
There's no question. Yeah, it
Yeah.
reminds me. I remember, I talk about we live life in 5 and 10 year increments, right? 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 15 to 20. So there's these moments these events that happen. I remember I've shared this before. I was I don't know, raking leaves or something. I was under 10 years old, and I my dad, it was Saturday or something, and we were doing house cleanup work, chores or something. I said, Dad, I can't do this. And he never swore. He yells for the first time, like, I never ever want to hear you say the word can't. To
Hmm.
remove the word can't. So removing the word can't, as in you can do anything you want to do. You just have to do it. Don't use the word can't. And it's interesting how that stays with you
Oh
forever,
man,
right?
life-changing moment right there for you.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was, yeah. So,
That
but
that
it
that
was a
became your
mentality.
mindset. That
Well, I think
became
it
your
did.
mindset.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
when you want to quit, you just the word, as we said, just remove the word can't from your vocabulary. I never ever want to hear you say the word I can't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's no question. I have had to use that a few times, but so anyway, that's what's the next one? Move on to the next one.
I think the next one's machine. So
Hmm.
this defines Google, I guess, defines a machine as a device that uses power to apply forces and control movement to perform a specific action.
Yeah.
It typically consists of an assembly of interrelated parts that work together to accomplish a task. This broad
Yeah.
definition can apply to everything from a simple hand tool to a complex computer system.
Yeah, I love this because back to a really good team is a machine, right? It just uh, I know you're a basketball guy, but those are machines that
Yeah.
can produce that overall. And a machine, a well-oiled machine, takes a lot of work to one to engineer it, and two to repeat it and again and again and again. And if you look at great championship, let's just say football teams, look at the New England Patriots. What a machine Tom Brady was with
Yeah,
Bill
yeah, the whole
Belichick. And
thing. And you know what they used to do, Jim, and you probably know this, but I'm being a New England sports fan, I know it for sure, is they used to trade guys that were great players if they didn't fit into the machine.
back to mentality, right?
Yeah,
Or
I don't
well,
care
we'll
how
get to the
much
next one, the
you made.
mindset too.
I don't care how many
That's right.
tackles you made. I don't care how many guys you sacked or how many passes you completed.
Yeah.
It does Being
Yeah.
part of this team has nothing to do with how good you are. It has to do with
Yeah.
where your head's at, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I listened to Julian Edelman podcast.
It's a
He's
good
really good,
podcast. Yeah.
but he remember he was the most undersized running back there probably was in the league at the time for sure. But yeah, he talks about that. The kind of guys that Belichick would bring in wasn't based on your size. It was based on your mentality, your
Yeah.
mindset, your ability to execute the play, and not just a toughness, but a competitiveness to to win the big ones. And boy, did they win, huh? What a
Yeah,
dynasty.
they sure did. I think yeah, he's an interesting guy. He was a
Yeah.
quarterback from Kent State and he ended up as
Edelman,
a
yeah, he's a Bay Area guy. He grew
yeah,
up right across the bay. Oh
he was a
yeah.
wideout a
Yeah.
wideout for
Also, an
sure.
interesting background. His father was a mechanic,
Yeah.
so an entrepreneur, and he talks. In fact, I listened to his father being interviewed, and you talk about a mindset and a mentality. Yeah, his father didn't have a father in his life, so he raised his children very differently, which is really cool. But he also was a Pop Warner coach, and they won all these championships.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great example of that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, let's go to the last one before we wrap up. I think this is the one that often gets referred to, but I they fit well into the other ones. So
Mindset. Yeah.
yeah.
Mindset is a term that refers to a person's established set of beliefs, attitudes, and ways of thinking. It acts as a mental filter through which you interpret and react to the world around you. Your mindset shapes your perception of situations, your goals, and your capacity to achieve. Yeah, kind of like what we were just
Mhm.
talking about.
Yeah, this one really, again, I'm going to use sports analogies and business because I remember when I was going from making cabinets to selling cabinets. In one year, I sold $1 million worth of cabinets, became the best or the number one sales guy or whatever. But it was also that competitiveness, right? Once I knew there was an award,
Mm-hmm.
I just had this mindset that I'm going to get that award. I don't know how, but I'm going to get that award. So I'll
Yeah.
sit at one banquet and watch everybody else get the award, but the next one, I want to be the one getting the award.
Yeah.
So whether it was business or even I remember our first national championship because when I first started playing rugby, we were like a Division 3, 500 at best, maybe not even that uh, club, a rugby club. And then when I started playing, we started getting a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And then we won the Division 2 national championship. And I just remember like the first day I played saying, oh, the first game I played in, I had this mentality, nobody runs on Hayward.
Mm-hmm.
And so my position was kind of like in rugby that it was like a linebacker, but I was, really good at defense because I had this unique ability, one to get to the tackler before he even would get the ball sometimes, just anticipating that. But I also had this mentality, we're gonna win the championship. And I remember somebody saying, "What?" I said, "Yeah, we're gonna win the national championship." And at the time they were looking at me like, this guy's crazy. There's no way, we can't even win 5 games in the season. What
Mm.
makes you think we can be a winner now? I says, no, we're going to win the national championship. And then of course it happened. And then the 10 years later, I did it not on the field, but as the president. It was the same thing. I'd developed many championships, so we had this culture of winning with some great players. But it was also that championship, national championship, Division 1. This is at the highest level. Was more as much off the field as on the field, right? Getting the right players, having the right coach, all those things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I think the thing about the right player is it makes me think about my business, and I made a conscious decision early on to hire people with no experience. And I
oh,
and I
interesting.
and I did that because that requires a different system. That requires different
Hmm.
training, different
That's your
rules,
method. That's your
different
methodology.
different oversight, right? But,
Yeah.
but the reason I did it was kind of twofold, and in hindsight I can see it very clearly. At the time, I think it was just a judgment call, a gut feeling. But it's like all the people that have experience in this business suck. They have bad
Hmm.
habits. They have senses of entitlement.
Hmm.
They don't know what they're
Interesting.
doing. They're transactional. I don't like the deprogramming piece and the entitlement piece. And these young people, when you hire somebody that doesn't have any experience and you teach
Yeah.
them how to do stuff, they are so loyal and grateful and receptive. It was
Hmm.
exactly what my personality and my mindset needed, and so it matched. And that's why I think these five, the order of them is less important than what
Yeah.
do you
I get it.
are they aligned, right?
Mhm.
Are they, because if I
Yeah.
hired senior people, I wouldn't have had to train them as much. I wouldn't have had the same, I wouldn't have
Hmm.
needed as tight a set of systems. I wouldn't have need as
Hmm.
restrictive a set of rules, and I would have gotten a different return on that investment. And that was a
Hmm.
conscious choice. But then now my hiring process, my training process, my onboarding process, and how to do the job are
Hmm.
completely aligned with the person I put in the machine, right?
Yeah. You were
So
the coach, right? You would recruit the player with the right mentality, the right skill sets,
Mm-hmm.
or I should say raw skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it also reminds me the value of a strong male in your life as a young man, but
Mm-hmm.
also good coaching and the mentality of the coach. I remember we had this coach in junior high school named Mr. Green. This is bad. This was an interesting time because this is the time if you said something wrong or you didn't stand on your number, he would literally kick you in the ass. He'd take his foot and kick you, right? And so they can't do that in these days, but that was he also had just these amazing athletes. He would just pump out championship after championship, and of course they
Yeah.
went on to the same high school, different high schools, and then our high school coach was the same way. The guy was always super put together, very smart, and had a high standard for you. So uh, when you said that about your company, you were the coach Clark's, and that was his name, and the Mr. Green, the PE teacher that was preparing them to go out on the field and compete. And
Yeah, I
what a
think
great
there's
gift you can give somebody.
yeah, it's there's so many thoughts, and we're coming up on our end here, but I think the alignment is it's one of
Oh
my
yeah,
favorite words. It's one of your favorite words.
it
I think
is.
that, and
Yeah,
when you think about this 5M framework, I think the what I've taken away from this thought process and
mhm.
discussion is really if all those things are aligned, then you have a well-oiled machine. And if they're
Yeah,
not
absolutely, Mark.
aligned, you got to look at more than one of them probably and make
Yeah,
some
it's
adjustments.
another podcast, and it's a great way to wrap it up. But I call it you have to calibrate. That means again, calibrate, get the first thing solid. That's like the foundation. And then it's the, like you said, the alignment, but then it's the connectivity. It's all three.
Mm-hmm.
It's establishing the first stone, the base of it. Once that's in place, the calibration of it, then again, then it's connecting the right people at the right time. And
Yep.
then it's
Yeah, it's like a
aligning the people, and then it's connectivity. So
yeah, it's a puzzle.
it's a
You
three-step
got to put the
process.
right pieces next to the right pieces. But hey,
Yeah.
before I forget, Jim, I wanted to say to everybody else, if this resonates with you, head over to the iTunes platform and give us a review and some stars or whatever sharing you can do. And if Spotify works better or our website works better, but we really think this is helpful stuff for some people. And I said at the beginning, if it's helpful for some, I think it's helpful for many. We just want to help spread the word. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Mark, until next week.
Sounds good, Jim. Thanks, man.